James was seen entering a luxurious five-star hotel on Valentine's Day, alongside a well-known actress. That very day, I shared an image of our divorce papers on Twitter. Our marriage had been discreet, but our separation quickly became a viral topic on social media. James felt humiliated by my actions and demanded that I gather my belongings and leave. I didn't take any of his possessions, only my cat. Later, he felt remorse and pleaded for my forgiveness by kneeling before me, but I refused, believing it was already too late. I was instructed to settle my bills. In the dead of night, I received a call from the hospital informing me that my mother was in critical condition and needed my immediate presence. Panic-stricken, I struggled to breathe and rubbed my face before heading to the payment desk. I presented my card, but the nurse returned it, stating, "This card is locked." Shocked, I tried another card, but it was also declined. I attempted all my cards, but none worked. It was unbelievable. It was James. He was retaliating against me for speaking out against Clara. These cards contained the savings I had set aside for my mother's medical expenses. How could he do this at such a crucial moment? The people behind me in line grew restless. "Can you hurry up? Can I pay later? My mom needs surgery now," I pleaded with the nurse, my voice shaky. "Absolutely not. You need to raise the funds immediately. Without payment, we can't proceed with your mother's surgery." I hesitated before trying to call James. I dialed his number multiple times, but it went straight to voicemail. Finally, I sent him a text. "Please unlock my cards. My mom needs surgery urgently." A red exclamation mark appeared. He had blocked me. The nurse tried to push me forward again. Desperate and in tears, I reached out to my best friend, Kathy. "Can you lend me $10,000? All my cards are frozen, and my mom is critically ill." Initially groggy, Kathy quickly responded, "Don't cry, I'll come over right away. I'll transfer you $5,000 first and then gather the rest." Her initial transfer came through swiftly, allowing me to pay enough to get my mother into the operating room. Alone outside the surgery room, I clasped my hands together, feeling the weight of our prayers hanging in the air, illuminated by the red light above the door. Trembling with fear, I pondered whether there would be anyone to claim my body if something happened to me while my mother fought for her life. Suddenly, my phone buzzed wildly. Popular actress seen with an unidentified man at midnight, showing deep affection at the airport. Despite the blurry image, I recognized James instantly. He had always been private and not one to display affection publicly. Yet there he was, embracing Clara warmly. The photo showed him kissing the young woman tightly. How sweet. No wonder he ignored my calls. Feeling weak and almost falling from my chair as my mother battled for her life, I realized James had frozen my accounts to punish me, forcing me to beg for money while he spent the night with his mistress. My nails dug into my palms, turning my knuckles white. Suddenly, Kathy burst in looking disheveled. "Where's James?" I showed her my phone. "Holy crap!" Kathy exclaimed, cursing under her breath. I grabbed her hand, tears finally streaming down my face. The surgery room light turned green. Instinctively, I held Kathy's hand and rushed inside. "Doctor, how is my mother?" The doctor shook his head. "You need to say your final goodbye. If we had started earlier, there might have been a chance." My legs gave way and I collapsed. Kathy quickly supported me. My mother was still warm, but the heart monitor showed a flat line. My mind went blank as tears flowed uncontrollably. If only James hadn't frozen my cards. If only he hadn't punished me for his affair. Why did I ever love him? Why did I choose him? "Isabel, you sacrificed your mother's life for your love. Are you happy now?" I bit my cheek, trying and failing to stop the painful sobs. "James, I will never forgive you." With Kathy's assistance, I arranged my mother's funeral. After burying her ashes, Kathy asked, "What will you do next?" "Get a divorce," I replied. Kathy hesitated but then agreed. "If you need a place to stay, come to mine." I smiled, as I had been preparing for this day. The media frenzy continued to escalate. Everyone was speculating about Clara's mysterious partner. Clara's Facebook hinted at a romance, and tabloids were ablaze with the news. I deleted Facebook, not wanting to see any more scandal, especially since I wouldn't be James's wife for much longer. A week after handling my mother's affairs, I returned to what used to be our home. I opened the door to a chilling sight, clothes strewn everywhere from the entrance. James had clearly rushed to bring Clara home. The bedroom door was slightly open, and the noises coming from inside made me feel nauseous. While my mother was dying, James was at the airport with Clara. While I managed the funeral, they were tangled in our former bedroom. Shocked, I sat on the couch, overwhelmed by the silent oppression of the past 2 years. After Clara moved in, James began staying out late. He started an entertainment company for her, removing any obstacles and showering her with resources. He treated her like a prized possession, even kissing her tenderly. Now he had brought her into our home. Countless times, I noticed lipstick stains on his collar, hickeys on his neck, and the scent of unfamiliar perfumes. Sitting quietly in the dark, I felt like a statue of despair. On the coffee table lay the divorce agreement I had brought. I told myself that some things had to end. I didn't realize how long I sat there until the bedroom door opened. James emerged shirtless, looking for a drink. The scratch marks on his body were clearly visible. He noticed me in the living room and smirked. Back to beg for mercy? I stared at him in silence. My mother is dead. James paused, sipping his water. That night, you froze my cards. I couldn't get the money in time to save her. I was about to respond when James interrupted with a mocking laugh. Without my money, she would have died long ago. How could he be so heartless? Anger surged through me. I grabbed the ashtray from the table and hurled it at him with all my might. James didn't dodge. The ashtray struck his forehead, and blood began to trickle down his cheek. I froze, staring at him. Have you lost your mind? At that moment, a woman's scream echoed. James, why are you bleeding? Clara rushed downstairs, wrapped in a towel with visible marks on her neck and chest. They had no shame. We need to talk. Tell your little lover to leave. I was so overwhelmed with anger that I could barely speak. James didn't even glance my way. Clara's presence immediately captured his attention. Why are you barefoot? She demanded. Go back upstairs. No way. Clara clung to James's arm, pouting. I don't want you talking to that wild woman. She's disgusting. I'm not leaving. Make her leave. James hugged her, not even looking at me, and gently soothed her. Don't worry. If anyone's leaving, it's her. Who do I love? Of course it's you, I whispered, biting my lip to stop the tears in front of him. I couldn't afford to cry in front of them. I barely had any dignity left. I didn't want to appear even more pathetic. Clara gave me a challenging look before glancing at the divorce papers on the table. I could swear I saw a flicker of joy on her face. In that moment, James turned to her and said, pointing at the papers, "Look at that." He looked visibly shocked, then frowned as if he had seen something vile. What does this mean? They had treated me as invisible all this time. Only now did they finally acknowledge my presence. I forced my trembling body to stay calm. James, my mother is dead. So what if she's dead? Clara muttered. Bitterness overwhelmed me, and I couldn't restrain my voice. Anna Marie, it's all because of you. Why did you freeze my cards? The doctor said she might still be alive if treated sooner. Who told you to bully Clara? James responded casually, as if it were a minor reprimand. The absurdity was too much. What did he think of me? Was he trying to train a dog? Miss Isabel, you look pathetic, Clara said nonchalantly. Blaming others for your mother's death? You're such a terrible person. Besides, hasn't James been covering your mom's medical bills all along? With an innocent expression, she added, You're just like the farmer and the snake. James paid so much for your mom, and now that she's dead, you use her death to morally blackmail him. You have such a terrible conscience. I was shaking with rage. Clara, aren't you afraid of retribution? James didn't even look at me. Stop the pathetic act. Do you think using your mom as an excuse will prevent me from divorcing you? A wave of insult washed over me, making me shiver uncontrollably. I couldn't believe these cruel words were coming from James. We're getting divorced. I stared at him intensely, feeling blood in my mouth from biting my cheek. I hadn't even noticed the pain. Maybe he didn't expect me to bring it up again. James's expression finally soured. Are you sure? I'm sure. I stared him down without flinching. James reviewed the papers and was surprised. You're leaving with nothing? Clara was also taken aback and peeked over his shoulder. I don't want anything, just a divorce. James's face twisted in anger as he took the pen I had prepared and signed his name. Then he threw the papers at my face, full of disdain. "Take your things and leave." The sharp edges of the A4 paper cut my face. I silently picked up the papers and headed for the door. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning at the Civil Affairs Bureau. The door slammed shut behind me with a heavy thud. Clara was James's first love, but his grandmother despised her and strictly prohibited her from joining the family. I had inadvertently saved his grandmother, leading her to force James to marry me. Grandma controlled the family's inheritance. James reluctantly agreed, always believing I was scheming, thinking I would use some trick to win over his grandmother and marry him for money. He thought I intended to have a child to secure my position, as if I were committing a crime, despite having loved him for 14 years. Have you ever met someone so captivating during school that you couldn't imagine being with anyone else afterward? That was James for me. He was my senior. James's mother was a renowned beauty, and his father was a scholar. He inherited their best traits, earning a PhD in economics from Oxford in his early 20s. To someone as ordinary as me, he seemed like a deity. I had prayed sincerely, wishing my deity could love me. On our wedding night, I was so nervous I felt like a stretched bow, but James grabbed my chin, looking at me with utter disgust. "No matter what dirty tricks you used, I will never love you." Then he pushed me away and spent the night in the study. I once believed my love could change him, but later realized it was just self-degradation. He despised my touch. Our first time together was the result of my calculated seduction. Amid the intense pain, I heard him call out, "Isabel!" I felt immense joy. In the early years, even though he was cold towards me, he never had anyone else around. I thought that as long as we had time, we could make it work. Until one day, after we were married, I accidentally overheard him on the phone calling someone tenderly Clara. That familiar, dull pain in my heart began to resurface. The next morning, I waited outside the marriage bureau. The blazing sun made me dizzy, but by noon, James still hadn't shown up. I called him. After numerous rings, he finally answered, his voice filled with condescending mockery. "Having second thoughts? When will you be here?" I responded calmly. "I've been waiting all morning." James abruptly ended the call after a long pause, sneering. To him, my request for a divorce was probably like a dog biting back at its owner, a blow to his pride. I sighed and began messaging someone from a secondary account. "James doesn't want a divorce. Could you talk to him?" The other person responded with a question mark, then quickly deleted it. It was okay. I knew she had seen it. A year ago, I started receiving photos from an anonymous Facebook account. Seeing items like shirts, ties, cufflinks, or other personal belongings I had chosen for him appear in those photos made me feel dirty. Now that I was ready to leave him, I couldn't endure it anymore. First loves truly have a hold over you. Less than 30 minutes after sending the message, James arrived at the marriage bureau with a dark expression. Honestly, I didn't understand why. He was the one in love with someone else. He was the one who cheated. I had already stepped aside. What was he so angry about? With the agreement in hand, no children, no property disputes, and clear intentions from both sides, the divorce process went smoothly, except for James staring at me the entire time. When I received the divorce papers, I exhaled deeply. "Leaving me makes you happy?" James's voice sounded displeased. I looked at him puzzled. "I can finally start my own life, not as your accessory, and I won't bother you anymore. Isn't that good?" While we were together, his friends never respected me. To them, I was just a gold digger who would be kicked out sooner or later. James and I were married for 7 years. At one point, I truly believed I had connected with him. I was afraid of thunder. He would rush home to comfort and hug me during storms. In the home theater, sitting on his lap, feeding him popcorn, unable to resist kissing him, he gradually opened up to me. I once thought we had a future together until Clara returned. Then I realized everything with him was a lie. I left as quietly as I had entered. All I took was my cat, Coco, a white long-haired cat with mismatched eyes. Sadly, she was deaf due to genetic factors. I found her on a rainy night and took her home. James's mother's first reaction was, "Stray cats are dirty. How can a woman trying to conceive keep a cat? Aren't you afraid of deformities?" But she was so small she would surely die if abandoned. I pleaded for a long time, even involving James's grandmother, and barely kept Coco. James's mother threatened me. "Once you're pregnant, this cat has to go." I held Coco gently, stroking her soft fur. Now, both of us were at risk of being thrown out. Coco couldn't understand human language. She just quietly watched me and licked my face. That's when I realized I was crying. I took one last look at the wardrobe filled with seasonal clothes and jewelry and walked out. The maid nervously eyed my wrists and neck, clearly wanting to check if I had stolen any jewelry. Even the servants showed me disrespect. James and I rarely made love, and afterwards, they searched the trash like I was an animal. The maid, loyal to James's mother, monitored every aspect of my life, reporting anything suspicious. I felt disgusted and discarded those items myself, but James's mother would send me those awful medicinal soups. James never touched me. How was I supposed to conceive? Looking back, our marriage was simply bad luck. I inadvertently saved James's grandmother, and under her pressure, I married James. Before the wedding, she told me, "Isabel, James just has a clumsy mouth. You'll understand once you get to know him." I know now. He's scum. After moving into the rented place, Coco quickly adapted to her new home, patrolled her territory, then lay down to groom herself, appearing carefree. I started worrying about my living expenses. After paying hospital bills and rent, I only had a small amount left. If I didn't find a job soon, I wouldn't survive. It was ironic. After staying with James for so long, I was still broke. He was always generous with purchases, even having brand managers bring seasonal items for me to choose from. I had all the jewelry and accessories I needed, but no money. James always thought I married him for his money. I couldn't argue. My mother was critically ill, and the ICU costs were astronomical. I couldn't afford it. Initially, James covered the costs, but once Clara returned, the payments stopped. I shamelessly asked for help, but James's mother dismissed me with a single sentence. "We're struggling too." Her newly bought 7-figure jade bracelet glowed softly as she spoke. I could only afford to move my mother to a cheaper nursing home and start figuring out how to make money myself. I knew James's mother didn't think highly of me. She looked down on my humble background, believing I couldn't support James. But she couldn't go against James's grandmother at all. Now that James was established in his career and Clara was back with better options than me, why would she tolerate my presence? James and I both graduated from the same university. Although there were a few gap years, I'd been freelancing online during that time, but I hadn't anticipated how difficult finding a job would be. My resume went from major companies to small firms. After the 20th rejection, even Kathy noticed something was wrong. Is someone sabotaging you? Who else could it be but James? With just a flick of his finger, he could leave me gasping for air. Today was no different. The company that had notified me of an interview yesterday apologized when I arrived. "Sorry, we've already found a suitable candidate." It had started to rain outside, and I hadn't brought an umbrella. Hesitating for a moment and thinking of my meager savings, I decided to brave the rain and head to the subway station. But as I was descending the stairs, someone suddenly bumped into me, and my high heels slipped, causing me to tumble down. I landed heavily, documents scattered everywhere. My phone flew far away, and sharp pain shot through my knee and elbow. Lifting my hand, I saw large abrasions already bleeding. The worst part was my skirt. I had worn a suit for the interview, and now it was torn up to my thigh, leaving me immobile. "Isn't this Miss Isabel? How did you end up like this?" Clara's voice chimed in, fake surprise laced with malice. Rain poured down on me as I looked up wretchedly, seeing James standing next to Clara, their lips pressed together. Did he just let Clara push me? Shameless! James's airy voice hit me like a slap in the face. Sorry. The stranger appeared perfectly on cue, extending a hand. "I accidentally bumped into you. Are you okay?" But seeing Clara's smug face, I knew this so-called passerby was no coincidence. My white shirt clung to me, turning semi-transparent from the rain. I pushed the man away, instinctively covering my chest, and tried to stand up, only to be crippled by the pain in my ankle. "Isabel!" A somewhat familiar voice called out in surprise. I turned back, bewildered, recognizing a vaguely familiar face. Seeing my confusion, he smiled. "Long time no see, I'm Tom." Then I remembered he was a junior, 2 years behind me. We had co-hosted a college event once, but now I was a mess. Embarrassment washed over me as I looked down. Suddenly, warmth enveloped me as Tom draped his jacket over me. The warmth made me shiver. "Isabel, let me take you home." I blinked, tears falling despite myself. Whoever it was, as long as they could take me away from this embarrassing scene, why is Tom here? James's voice, tinged with hidden anger, sounded from behind. Only now did Tom seem to notice the two others standing there looking up quizzically. "Well, looks like there are two more people breathing." James's lips pressed downwards, showing his displeasure. Tom laughed cheekily, extending his hand to me. "Isabel, need a ride to the hospital?" From an angle James couldn't see, Tom winked at me, whispering, "Let's go." I barely managed to suppress a smile, placing my hand in his. "Excuse me," I heard Tom say softly. Suddenly, I was lifted off the ground as Tom carried me horizontally. James's face finally darkened completely. "Isabel!" The loud squeal of a rubber chicken was his response. Tom pulled a rubber chicken from seemingly nowhere and squeezed it several times before mockingly throwing it out the window. No idea why the dog's barking. He pressed the gas pedal and sped off. "Isabel, are you okay?" Tom drove effortlessly with practiced ease. "I'm fine." I shook my head. "You can drop me at the subway station up ahead." Tom looked shocked. "Isabel, is my car not good enough for you? Why are you in such a hurry to drop me off? At least let me go to the hospital to treat your wounds." Looking at the golden prancing horse logo on his steering wheel, I remembered rumors about his affluent background in school. Drenched, I sat on his leather seat, fidgeting. What if I ruined his seats? I couldn't afford to pay for them. "No need for the trouble." But Tom cut me off. "My mom always taught me that girls are precious and should be well taken care of." "Your mom must be a very gentle person," I mused sincerely. "Of course." Tom grinned and then magically produced a bouquet of daisies for me. The white flowers cradled in my arms conveniently hid my disheveled front. I was grateful for his considerate gesture. After tending to my wounds, the doctor said my ankle was badly sprained and I needed a week in the hospital. I couldn't afford a hospital stay, so I hurriedly declined, insisting on recovering at home. "Who's going to take care of you?" Tom frowned. "My best friend will." I felt very embarrassed. "I've already troubled you enough today. Plus, I need to get home to feed my cat." "You have a cat?" Tom's eyes lit up like an excited puppy. "Yes, a white one." Mentioning Coco, I couldn't help but smile. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go." I couldn't resist his enthusiasm and agreed. The neighborhood I lived in was quite old. With poor lighting at night, Tom's driving skills were unexpectedly good. Even in a place like this, he drove smoothly and effortlessly. As we rounded a corner, I vaguely saw a flashing red light, but before I could make it out, Tom's car had already passed it. Once inside, Coco, who was usually very aloof, circled Tom's legs, wagging her fluffy tail and meowing sweetly. I was stunned. Coco typically disliked everyone except me. This was the first time she showed friendliness to anyone else. What kind of magic cat is this? Tom was over the moon, hugging Coco and showering her with kisses. Even when he was about to leave, he was reluctant. "Isabel, can I come see Coco again?" Seeing Coco cling to his pants, almost wanting to climb onto him, I felt a twinge of jealousy toward my own cat. "Of course." As he was about to leave, Tom hesitated for a long time. "Isabel, do you want to work at my company?" I was taken aback, and then shame washed over me. He saw through me. No. Tom waved his hands frantically. "Isabel, don't get me wrong. I've been watching you for a long time." I looked at him in shock. What was he talking about? Tom fumbled for a moment before finally sighing in defeat, looking like he was about to face a firing squad. "Isabel, first of all, I'm not a stalker," he continued awkwardly. I'm a fan of your novels." He nervously fiddled with his fingers before finally taking out his phone and showing it to me. The familiar and cute kitty avatar appeared. Wasn't this my fan? The chat record of our conversation from the previous night was still there. "I love your new story. I'll try to get my dad to invest in making it into a movie. Wait for me." I had always thought he was a 16-year-old rich girl who needed to go to school every day because he was only online after 9 p.m. each night. I stared at him puzzled. "Dad?" His face was so red it seemed like it could bleed. Finally, he gave up in exasperation. "It's me, okay?" After hearing that I was looking for work, I wanted to ask him to join my company as a screenwriter. My dad provided me with an entertainment company. He said if I couldn't make something of it, I shouldn't even think about taking over. You have no idea how awful some of those scripts are. The gap between being an author and a screenwriter seemed vast. I was stunned. You don't have to, but his expression was very serious. Isabel, I want to hire you not out of pity, but because you deserve it. Come to my company. I can offer you a better platform. I was about to consider it, but that night a message from my landlord urging rent payment quickly made me abandon any hesitation. If I kept holding back, either Coco or I would end up suffering. It was better to swallow my pride than starve. Tom was ecstatic to hear my decision. Really? Take good care of yourself. Come work as soon as you're better. That night, I received a call from James. Found a new gig already? Followed by several photos of Tom dropping me off at home. His voice was laced with sarcasm. Isabel, you're as low as ever, huh? Always spreading your legs for any man with money and influence. My teeth clenched and the humiliation hit me like a slap in the face. 7 years together, and this is how James saw me. James, did you call just to insult me? He paused, then laughed maliciously. Yes, James, the biggest regret of my life is marrying you. I immediately blocked his number. A former classmate whom I had only hosted a competition with still came through in times of need, but my ex-husband only cared about who I was with. It just so happened that day was Valentine's Day. I posted a picture of my divorce certificate. Twitter went wild. I had never seen my Twitter so active before. Countless messages poured in, asking if it was true when I married James and why I divorced him. In the eyes of those so-called upper-class people, whether it was Clara or me, there was no difference. We were nothing but commodities. That night, a topic about a certain actress suspected of climbing the ranks became a trending topic, but it didn't even remain for the next morning before being quietly removed. Another topic suddenly surged to the top: characteristics of actresses who marry into wealthy families. At the top of the list was Clara. He truly did everything for Clara. After taking a week off, I started working at Tom's company. Tom didn't deceive me. He had recently bought an entertainment company and genuinely needed reliable screenwriters. I quickly adapted to the role. I genuinely enjoyed writing. Now I could see my scenes come to life on set. There's nothing more joyful for an author than that. But Tom began coming around quite often. At first, he would formally call me Isabel, but later it just became Isabel without formality. The screenwriting team he hired was very young, meaning they were pretty carefree. Whenever Tom visited, he brought lots of fresh fruit. As time passed, it seemed the team got used to his treats. When Tom arrived, someone would fake a cough to get some fresh air, and then a group would link arms and leave under the pretense of going to the bathroom. At first, I didn't really notice. I was well aware of my own feelings. I'm a divorced woman. Just relying on my junior's care, would I still be foolish enough to hope for anything else? We're not living in a fairy tale. I know I'm not the main character. After 7 years with James, I understand well that I was never the main character, just a side character in someone else's love story. So when Tom showed his interest, I mostly avoided him. When I couldn't, I pretended not to understand. Young guys can't hide their feelings. His eyes sparkled, wanting to give me everything. After all, he's a young rich guy. Why would he need to come to the set every day? I later found out that Tom's family background was as good as James's, if not better. His family had fled abroad during a war decades ago and retained their wealth. No wonder James only dared to boast but never make a move. I appreciated Tom's kindness, but the only way to repay him was to write good scripts and make money for the greedy capitalist boss. For a long time, our relationship was like Coco's owner and Coco's good friend. After repeatedly hitting a wall, Tom probably understood my thoughts. He stopped being so eager to be around me. I felt relieved. There are so many young and beautiful girls. He just liked the author temporarily. I shouldn't hold him back. He deserves better. That night, the mysterious texts didn't come, but Clara and James kept trending. The latest news suggested they might be getting married soon. Paparazzi caught them holding hands on a street in Zurich. James must be single now. They weren't hiding their relationship anymore. I saw a radiant pink diamond ring on Clara's hand. Seeing that ring felt like something was squeezing my heart. When that ring went up for auction, James was coincidentally in Zurich. Back then, we were still on good terms, and he asked what I wanted. I pointed to the ring in the catalog, But he didn't bring it back, only saying he didn't win it. I was disappointed, thinking he was just busy. Looking back, I realized it was because I wasn't worth it. I looked at the photo, and tears started to fall despite my laughter. Reflecting on the years with James sometimes feels like a nightmare. We were on completely different paths. It was a mistake to cross paths. At least now I've woken up from the dream. Tom's contract terms are pretty flexible. Besides his company's projects, I can take on other work as long as there's no conflict. I really love turning words into reality. It's a unique kind of joy. Until I ran into Clara on set. I was trying to avoid her and James, but surprisingly, after we started filming, she kicked out the original leading actress and took over the role on her first day. Clara had people distribute afternoon tea all over the set and warmly greeted everyone. She seemed kind and gentle. It didn't show that she'd cornered me in a room like scolding a stray dog. Life doesn't seem too good for you after leaving James. She looked around the hotel room, seeing my instant noodles and black coffee from working overnight, filled with scorn. Haven't I heard you're clinging to Tom? Is this how he treats you? I couldn't bother responding, focusing on typing away. I had several deadlines. Who had time for her nonsense? My silence only seemed to encourage Clara, making her more arrogant. Tom's family will never let you in. Stop dreaming of being Cinderella. Finishing the last word, I saved my work and finally looked at her. Not everyone moves up by relying on men like you do. Clara seemed shocked that I dared to challenge her directly. Standing there stunned, I found it laughable. I had stepped back for James because I loved him, but now Clara dared to flaunt in front of me. Who did she think she was? I don't care if James adores you. We're divorced. If you want to be Mrs. James's wife, be my guest. I just want to be a good scriptwriter. The pink diamond on her raised finger sparkled, but her face was as gray as a 3-day-old corpse. James truly was willing to spoil her. Now I understood the power of money. He had never treated me so specially. After joining the crew, Clara first complained about the character's unlikable persona, and then about the storyline not being engaging enough. Her so-called top-notch screenwriter messed up the original script. That was one thing, but her writer tried bossing everyone around. When she wanted to turn the naive girl character into a powerful heroine, again, I couldn't bear it anymore. You can't change the plot like this. It ruins the original core. Clara turned the character into a pure romance trope, with every man falling in love with the heroine. Clara stayed silent, but her assistant jumped in to defend her, spitting insults. Clara can carry an entire show on her own. Who do you think you are? But I tried to reason, but no one listened. Everyone around just watched the drama unfold between a famous actress and an unknown writer. It was obvious whose side they took. Director? Clara smiled gently at the director. I'd like Isabel, the writer, to rehearse with me. The director, already biased, was eager to agree. When Clara wanted to make peace, Isabel, rehearse with Clara. But why would a writer need to do acting rehearsals? The director didn't even look at me. If you don't want to rehearse, then don't write the script either. I suddenly realized that Clara had powerful backing. James was the one supporting her. Everyone knew Clara had come to teach me a lesson, but there was little they could do about it. This industry always oppressed the underprivileged while promoting those in power. Clara orchestrated a scene where the female lead slapped the male second lead in the rain. It was winter, and Clara had arranged for the faucet to be turned on at full blast. I was sulking, unable to open my eyes against the relentless water, and the icy cold made my bones ache. Meanwhile, Clara, who had promised to act alongside me, stood outside in her coat, calmly directing the scene. Yes, turn up the rain. It's still not enough. The emotions aren't coming through. More rain. The downpour soaked me for a full 30 minutes, leaving me on the verge of hypothermia. Then Clara signaled to stop the water. Isabel fully approached and delivered a hard slap to my face. The rain had left me numb, but her slap brought me back to reality. Clara sneered in a tone only we could hear. I've never liked you. Who do you think you are? You were lucky to join the Jung family. Do you still think you can keep the title of Mrs. James? Look at yourself. Do you really deserve it? I wiped the blood from my mouth and responded coolly, paying to silence rumors about your upcoming wedding must have cost a lot, huh? But why haven't I seen James marry you yet? Even after our divorce so long ago, doesn't he want to? Clara's face flushed with anger. Bitch! She raised her hand, about to strike me again, and I instinctively closed my eyes. But the expected pain never came. I cautiously opened one eye and saw Clara's hand being held by someone, her screams indicating she was hurt. Tom's expression was unyielding. I had never seen him so furious before. "Stop!" Clara's face turned pale with pain as she cried out, "Let go! Let go of me, it hurts!" James intervened, seething with anger. "Let her go!" It dawned on me that James had arrived without me noticing. The man I once loved deeply. If it had been earlier, seeing him like this would have shattered my heart. But now, I was astonished to find I felt nothing. Work truly was the best way to break any enchantment. Without my affectionate perspective, he was just an ordinary man. Clara's face twisted in pain. Her assistant resembled a barking chihuahua, comical but too frightened to get involved. Everyone recognized them, but no one dared to step in. Tom glanced at James and sneered, "James, your people skills are as poor as your script choices." He released Clara, tossing her aside like a lifeless dog, and she immediately began to whimper, hiding behind James. Strangely, James ignored her, instead focusing on me, protected by Tom. "Isabel, come over here." The warmth began to return, and my face ached almost numb, likely swollen. I covered my face and withdrew further behind Tom. Tom looked back at me, a hint of amusement lurking in the corners of his mouth. "Don't be scared." He took my hand and led me away. "Isabel, come back here," James shouted, gritting his teeth behind us. I questioned Tom. "Isn't this strange? Do you hear a dog barking somewhere?" Tom couldn't help but laugh. "Yeah, it's springtime." Once we were out of sight, Tom halted and began a serious talk. "Next time you face something like this, run immediately. Understood? I'll always protect you." I appreciated his intentions, but I couldn't live forever under someone else's protection. One mistake was enough. Claire had used the rehearsal as a cover. "Don't worry, she wouldn't truly attack me, the writer. She's the actress. Public scrutiny affects her more." Tom's expression remained stern, like an angry Doberman glaring at me. "I sent you to work as a writer, not to be mistreated. But dealing with crap is part of being a corporate drone." I patted him. "It's just some minor injuries. Besides, I secretly recorded everything on my phone. If she tries to come at me again, I have leverage." Earlier, Claire had been in too much of a hurry. I lingered to set up the phone. Her usual gentle first love image would collapse disastrously if she attempted to bully me again. Tom thought for a moment, then, like a detached Afghan hound, smirked at me. He then took out his phone and made a call right before me. "Fire both the incompetent director and actress from the crew. I'll find my own team." Tom made a second call. "Purchase the rights to that youth campus drama. We'll produce it ourselves." Could he really do that? The very next day, Clara left the crew with her so-called top-tier writer and team, then began insinuating online about being bullied on set. She even shared a video, appearing pure and innocent. I had crafted a well-written script and aimed to present a unique story. Evidently, the crew had different priorities. Initially, I wanted to discuss matters with the writer, but was misconstrued as trying to insert myself into the role, so I decided to withdraw from the project. This was significant. Clara made it clear she had been forced out. Her fans couldn't accept it, and launched fierce attacks against the crew online. Tom didn't miss an opportunity to counteract it. He quickly reorganized the crew, reassigned roles, hired new actors, and resolved everything efficiently. Then he posted a notice on Facebook about replacing the lead actor. His speed was remarkable, leaving Clara or James no chance to save face. Clara, who typically worked on major screen projects, had reluctantly joined this crew. Her fans were already unhappy. Now with such a major disruption, it was on the verge of exploding. So Tom personally took over the crew, extremely confident. After everything that happened, I clenched my teeth, determined to polish an excellent script. Every day, I was losing hair in clumps from stress. The campus drama Tom took over midway did surprisingly well. When it aired, the first episode immediately garnered over 1 million views. The lead actors were all newcomers, but that fresh feeling perfectly matched the drama. As it broadcasted, the hype only grew. Tom was willing to invest money, had connections, and the show itself was good. It transformed a low-budget drama into an S-tier hit. On the night the show concluded, our entire team, along with Tom, watched the screen nervously. The ratings soared to 40 million views. Everyone erupted in cheers. The pre-prepared champagne tower was rolled out. Tom generously declared, "Celebrate tonight. Go all out. I've booked the bar downstairs and the infinity pool on the rooftop for all of you." Everyone laughed. Tom was a generous boss. People praised him while playfully forcing him to drink. In a young company, once everyone drinks, they start to let loose. We began with the King's game, but Tom had terrible luck that day, and the coworkers were relentless. Number 4, kiss the first person of the opposite sex to your left. Tom's face darkened as he revealed his card. The first person to his left was me. The coworkers roared with excitement. Tom gave in and drank 3 glasses instead. In the next round, number 8 do push-ups on number 3. Number 8 was him, number 3 was me. Tom, looking serious, flipped his card and downed 3 more glasses. Eventually, he couldn't handle it. "Let's play something else." During a break, I went to the restroom and overheard 2 female coworkers worrying while touching up their makeup. I feel bad for the boss. When will Isabel notice his feelings? No idea. If we can't help him tonight, we're out of options. I hesitated for a long time in the bathroom before returning to the room. When I came back, they had switched to whack-a-mole. It was simple. 5 strings of different colors, a cup in the center with dice. Roll the dice and cover the matching string. It tested reflexes. But everyone was slightly intoxicated. Their reactions were slower than usual. I couldn't hold my liquor and kept losing. After a few drinks, I started feeling dizzy. When they tricked me again, before I could grab my glass, a hand took it first. Tom sat upright and blocked me. "I'll drink for her." "No need." I tried to push away, but he pulled me back. He whispered in my ear, "Stop it." His breath on my ear made me shiver. Then I felt his shoulders shake slightly. Was he laughing? Coworkers, stunned for a moment, began coughing loudly in mockery. "I'm going to play something else. I need to use the restroom too. What weird things are you going to do in the restroom?" I was so dizzy, instinctively tried to pull my hand back but couldn't move. A while later, he asked softly, "Drunk? Want to get some fresh air upstairs?" I nodded weakly, almost stumbling as I stood. "Still want to go?" Tom's voice sounded worried. I nodded firmly. The infinity pool was beautiful. Probably drunk out of my mind, I insisted on cooling off in the pool. Tom left with no choice, found me a swimsuit, and kept urging, "Wait, I'll change and be right back." Annoyed, I pushed his face away. Tom helplessly left, constantly looking back. The alcohol probably intensified my craving. Seeing the inviting blue water, I couldn't resist and jumped in with a splash. The pool water was warm. After soaking for a while, I noticed a large float nearby. Remembering those photos on Facebook of people floating in infinity pools, I climbed on with some effort. The pool's waves gently pushed the float toward the edge, floating happily, occasionally kicking the water. Suddenly, an almost terrified voice rang out. "Isabel, don't move." I looked up, dazed, to see Tom frantically splashing towards me. Could he not swim? As the float drifted back, Tom desperately shouted, "Grab my hand." Alcohol fogging my mind, I hesitated, but eventually extended my hand. Tom yanked me off the float before I reacted. The float drifted over the last wave and fell off the rooftop. Reality slowly hit me. The infinity pool had no safety barriers. Didn't he tell me to stay still? For the first time, Tom yelled at me. Then I noticed he was trembling all over. He clung to me, his face pale as a sheet. "You scared me to death." His voice quivered with a hint of tears. Only then did the overwhelming fear wash over me, making me weak, me relying on Tom for support. If I had stayed on that float, I'd be dead now. "Wait!" I frantically patted his arm. "The float fell. Will it hit someone? Go check." Tom looked even paler than me. We supported each other shakily as we approached the pool's edge to check below. About 5 meters down, there was a platform where the floating mat had landed. Thank goodness nobody was hurt. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. As the fear subsided, I noticed the awkwardness of our current situation. The young man's body radiated heat that made me feel hot all over. "Let go of me," I said, but Tom looked up, and to my shock, he was crying. Before I could react, he lowered his head, grabbed the back of my head, and kissed me passionately. "Isabel, can you please consider me?" It all happened so suddenly, I was completely stunned. Suddenly there was a loud crash. The door was violently kicked open and an angry figure stormed in. James rushed forward and kicked Tom into the pool. Water splashed all over my head and face, and I was terrified. My chin was then firmly held and lifted to meet James's bloodshot eyes. He stared at me with a rage that felt almost tangible. "What are you two doing?" he demanded. Why was he here? Behind him was Clara, her face smug with satisfaction. "Let go of me!" James's grip was strong, making my jaw ache. I struggled to pry his fingers apart, but couldn't. Clara was acting coquettish and whiny. "James, she's using Tom to kick me out of the crew. See? I was right!" With a shrill scream from Clara, James was suddenly punched hard from the side, knocking him over and shattering a nearby beach chair. "You call yourself a man, hitting a woman!" Tom climbed out of the pool, furious, standing protectively in front of me. James sat up on the ground, wiped the blood from his mouth, and glared darkly. "Clara, get lost!" James snapped, pushing her away as he lunged at Tom again. The two of them began brawling violently by the poolside. The sound was like two heavy machines crashing into each other, breaking tables and chairs everywhere. Amid the chaos, there seemed to be a flash of light somewhere. Clara, still acting dramatic, screamed, "Stop fighting!" Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly stood up, approached Clara from behind, and kicked her hard in the lower back, sending her splashing into the water. Seeing her struggle and blow bubbles was just so satisfying. My flying kick left Tom and James dumbfounded. Tom still held onto James's collar, and both men stared at me in shock. "Let's go!" Tom happily followed me, his face bruised and battered. Clara continued to flail and scream in the pool. James took a few steps toward me. "I need to talk to you." But with Clara screaming for help behind him, he hesitated for a long moment before turning back to save her. "Wait for me!" I didn't wait. This kind of thing had happened too many times before. This time, I felt completely free. Tom followed me as we left. I saw him subtly flip a middle finger behind him. Since Tom got hurt because of me, I couldn't just walk away. But he refused to go to the hospital, saying that he couldn't be absent from the upcoming award event as the boss. Then he turned to me with a pitiful look, begging to be taken care of. Yeah, that's right. He and James had a fight, and he ended up with a fractured arm. After much thought, I decided to cook for him, but I never imagined that the next day when I opened the door, I would see Tom gleefully waving at me from across the hall. "Hi, Isabel! Isabel, look at me! Look at me!" When had he rented the place across from me? I turned around and closed the door silently, letting him scratch frantically outside. "Isabel, why won't you let me in? Isabel? Isabel?" I couldn't handle this kind of life anymore. People in the neighborhood group chat were complaining someone frequently parked in other spots and littered with cigarette butts. It was infuriating. I got a call from James's grandmother. "Isabel, it's been so long since you visited me." Hearing her kind and gentle voice, I almost burst into tears. Mom's memory came flooding back, but I held back my tears and managed to smile. "I'll come see you tonight. Since my divorce, this was my first time back at James's house." Grandma had been waiting early in the living room and lit up when she saw me. "Isabel, come let Grandma have a look at you." She examined me carefully and then frowned. "Why have you lost weight?" I didn't want to upset an elderly woman who had always been kind to me, so I simply smiled. "I've been very busy lately." "Even if you're busy, you need to eat well." James's grandmother looked concerned. "I'll talk to James." "Grandma, James and I are divorced." I sighed. She froze, then let out a long sigh. "Isabel, it's my son's fault for mistreating you. Can't you reconsider?" I shook my head at the respectful elderly lady. From the night my mom died and James cut off my credit cards, there was no turning back. Today, I was here to return something. I solemnly took out a box containing the bracelet that James's grandmother had given me at our wedding. But she shook her head. Her frail but warm hand held mine. "What I gave you belongs to you." Before she could finish speaking, we heard Anna greeting someone outside. I instinctively turned and saw James and his mother entering. James's mother was holding Clara's hand warmly. "Mom, we're back," James said, looking startled the moment he saw me. What's there to panic about? He was the one who cheated first. He had feelings for someone else, and now he was pretending to be innocent. Clara was wearing a white coat today with a brown scarf. She looked gentle and demure, just the type elders love. "Mom, this is..." James's mother beamed as she led Clara over, but as soon as James's grandmother saw her, her face darkened. "Why did you bring her here?" Clara's smile froze on her face. "I only invited Isabel today. Why are you bringing just anyone home?" But James interrupted his grandmother. "Grandma, she's my guest." Grandma was so angry she started trembling and raised her cane to hit James. "You think you've grown up and I can't control you anymore? I went out of my way to invite someone back for you, and you treat them like this to spite me?" James just stood there, not dodging or avoiding, taking the hit from the cane. We got divorced. For some reason, I could hear a hint of defiance in James's voice. "Grandma, I'll be leaving now." "Isabel." I heard Grandma call my name from behind. I stopped and turned around, seeing tears in Grandma's eyes. "You will always be Grandma's good granddaughter. It's James who doesn't have a connection with you. Come visit Grandma when you have time. This will always be your home." Clara didn't even get a chance to speak, standing there like a backdrop, looking extremely unhappy. James's gaze fell on the box I had put down, and he froze. Then he grabbed my hand and aggressively dragged me outside. "I have something to say to you." Clara's face turned pale. James fell silent. James snapped back mercilessly. She probably had never experienced such humiliation before, and tears welled up in her eyes. But this was my daily life during the 7 years I was married to James. I didn't feel refreshed by it, only sad. "Let go of me." I forcibly pulled my wrist away, but James held on tightly. "Have you had enough?" He looked a bit frantic. "We are divorced," I had to remind him. "Do you know what that bracelet means?" James kept losing his composure tonight. I felt he might be sick. "I don't know, and I don't care. That's a sign of my wife." James stared at me intensely. "Just come back." He was always proud. This might be the first time he begged someone, but I just found it funny. "Why do you think I'd care about that?" I approached James step by step. For the first time, even I didn't realize there were tears in my eyes. "I once loved you so much, James, but you destroyed everything." I repeated what I had told Grandma earlier. "From the night you caused my mom's death, we were done." He opened his mouth as if wanting to explain something, but in the end, he just issued an ultimatum as usual. "I will make you come back willingly." It had started raining outside without me noticing. I didn't expect to see Tom at the old house's entrance. Seeing me come out, he immediately got out of the car, hurriedly took off his scarf, wrapped it around me, then covered my head with an umbrella. "Why did you come out wearing so little? Are you cold?" I was stunned. "What are you doing here?" "Long story." Tom dodged the question. "Are you planning to chat with me here?" He looked around the old house with some disdain. "So tacky. Did you actually let him come to pick you up?" James had also followed us out at some point holding an umbrella. "Of course. I didn't delude myself into thinking it was for me." "Sure enough, Isabel. You shameless woman. Do you think this is a place for that?" "Shameless? That's you," I retorted. "Cheating in marriage, abusing power. Do you think you're noble?" Fine. He was so angry he laughed. "So now you have someone backing you up. Does he know how you crawled into my bed to seduce me?" "James, I couldn't stand it any longer and slapped him hard. Do you even listen to yourself?" James covered his face, looking utterly incredulous. "You hit me for another man. I regretted being blind back then, willing to marry you." "Let's go," I told Tom the last sentence. "Get us out of here." Tom happily complied, helping me lift my skirt as he opened the car door, and then he sped off. I thought I would cry, but there was someone next to me, happily humming When the Devils Come to Town. It was impossible to cry. Halfway through the drive, I suddenly looked at him and noticed he was skillfully steering with his right arm. "Where's your cast and bandages?" After a long pause, he nervously said, "Can you just pretend you didn't see it? You need to move out from across the street." Ever since my screenplay got nominated for the Golden Lily Award for Best Screenplay, Clara's fans had been going crazy. When I won Best Screenplay and my lead actress won Best Actress while Clara lost again, they were absolutely livid. As the culprit named by Clara, my entire family history was dug up by her fans. A well-known reporter then revealed secrets behind the Best Screenplay award. New and old lovers fighting for her, not hesitating to brawl. The accompanying photos were of James and Tom fighting that night. Soon enough, people identified the two men in the picture. Aren't those James, her current boss, and Tom? This woman knows what she's doing. Her first show was a hit. Her new flame invested heavily in marketing. Didn't Clara get kicked off the set? He not only discredited my talent, but also dismissed my efforts, even suggesting I won through bribery. I wondered how much Clara paid him. If this accusation stuck, I'd be blacklisted from the industry. But did Clara really think I wouldn't reveal our divorce to the public? I directly responded, "Are you suggesting the competition's judging panel was unfair? Do you know that spreading false rumors can lead to a lawsuit if it's shared over 500 times? Finally, I called out Clara directly. Miss Clara, there were only 4 of us on the rooftop that night. How did you manage to sneak into our company's exclusive building and bring James up to attack our boss? James and I at least have a divorce certificate, but you, an unmarried celebrity, were involved with my ex-husband multiple times during my marriage. After our divorce, you brought someone to beat my boss under the pretext of catching an affair, causing me to lose my job." Clara didn't dare respond, standing there pretending to be dead. The internet had probably never seen such a confrontational writer, and everyone joined in to watch. Clara, the first love of the entertainment circle, not only tangled with someone during James's marriage, but even her burner account used to DM me got exposed. Of course, I wouldn't miss this chance. I reposted it on Facebook. The divorce screenshot resurfaced on public social media, stirring up the entire platform. My DMs were flooded. Countless Clara fans bombarded me with crazy insults. They called me a slut and a shameless bitch. They even went after my mom. The hateful words rained down, and even though I thought I was strong enough, I still felt suffocated. I had experienced cyberbullying before, but this time I felt a deep sense of helplessness. James called me then. He asked, "Do you regret it?" He used an unfamiliar number. I shot back, "Do you regret it?" He seemed confident. "I can handle the online backlash," he said. "Isabel, come back. I can forgive everything you've done." I hung up the phone immediately. I've always been used to being alone. I never expected so many people to speak up for me. Celebrities I had worked with before and the writing teams I collaborated with, celebrities cared about their public image, but writers were different. Their writing was sharper than knives. They mocked and ridiculed, leaving Clara's fans utterly defeated. Clara had posted a fake tearful defense video, which got thousands of shares in an hour, with the comment section filled with curses. She got so scared that she disabled comments. Whenever Clara had negative news before, James would handle it for her, but this time, for some reason, James stayed silent. He even started sending me flowers every day like he was crazy. I didn't get it. What was he aiming for? A sympathy act? The strangest part was that I began receiving scripts that I normally would never get offered. The pay was ridiculously high, and all I had to do was nod to get my name on them. Finally fed up, I called James and asked, "What do you want?" He replied, "Whatever Tom can give you, I can give you too." His voice was deep on the other end. "Isabel, can you give me a chance to explain?" His sentence was cut off when my phone suddenly died. There were reports of Clara going to James's corporate headquarters, but not even getting to see him. Clara was stunned. She always relied on her clout to pressure others, but now she faced backlash and had to negotiate with James. The director was over the moon from all the generated buzz. I was pleased too, knowing my PR efforts paid off. Finally, I gave them a big gift, a lawsuit. I gathered evidence and sued Clara for defamation. The lawsuit was minor. The main goal was to ruin her reputation. Clara's agency was frantic with worry. During this time, Tom frequently mooched meals and eventually tricked me into cooking at his house. I knew his intentions weren't pure, but I didn't reject him. That night, I finally managed to escape from Tom's persistent attempts, only to find a dark figure at my door making me scream. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Tom rushed over with a baseball bat. It was James. He didn't know how long he'd been there, looking disheveled. "Isabel, are you living with him?" "Yes," Tom answered quickly. I glanced at him but didn't deny it. James's face turned even more ashen. "I need to talk to you." I looked at him, knowing this needed resolution. Tom looked like he wanted to bite someone. "If you want to talk, leave the door open," I said. James hesitated as he entered, seeing a lot of things in pairs. His eyes dimmed. "You too?" he started, but I interrupted. "Are you pleading for Clara? If so, there's no need to talk. She's done so many bad things. She deserves it." "No," James said, shaking his head with a bit of embarrassment. "Isabel, please give me another chance. I don't want the divorce." I was stunned. Tom, who was still outside, was also stunned. The door was open. I occasionally saw Tom pretending to pass by with his ears pricked up, ready to burst in. James hesitated for a long time. I always thought I loved Clara, but after the divorce, I realized I was just obsessed with her. He continued painfully. "I later understood that I didn't take you to events because I didn't want others to see your beauty. I was called to you in front of my friends because I was afraid they'd know I had feelings for you." With that, he pounded his chest as if in agony. "Those days and nights we spent together, I miss holding you while watching movies. I miss every moment we spent. I wake up from nightmares every day. I can't accept anyone else by your side. I regret it, Isabel. I can break it off with Clara right now. Can you come back to me?" But I just looked at him quietly. James seemed to sense something, a bit of panic in his expression. "Anything else? Do you have anything else to say? On our wedding night, you told me to get lost. I made you your favorite dishes with so much effort. You went to the airport to pick up Clara. James, I've never asked much of you. Just that ring. And you gave it to Clara. Now you want me back? James, you never saw me as someone deserving of respect, did you?" I laughed and almost cried for the 7 years wasted. Our biggest problem was you. Before I could finish, James just straight up knelt in front of me. "I'm sorry. That night, I didn't expect my mom would suddenly need emergency care. Clara took my phone and said it was your ploy." I finally couldn't stand it anymore. "James, you locked the card. At least be a man and stop blaming women for everything. You disgust me." "Isabel, it's too late. Unless my mom comes back to life, I can never forgive you." Looking at the man I once deeply loved, I realized he could no longer stir any emotions in me. I once thought he was a deity from the heavens. Now it seems he's just a lowly, arrogant man. Without James's protection, all the dirt on Clara got exposed. Drinking, drug abuse, reckless driving, promiscuity, sleeping with older men for money. It was enough to ruin her completely. Finally, Clara realized James had truly given up on her. She dropped the innocent act on Facebook and went crazy. She released a series of evidence. If I'm going down, we go down together. I finally understood why James was so obsessed with Clara, always catering to her. He committed manslaughter while drunk driving abroad, and Clara took the fall for him. This wasn't some first love, but rather two criminals protecting each other till the end. He never told the truth. Under extreme public scrutiny, James and Clara both ended up in jail. Two scumbags, not a bad ending, right? After leaving the court, Tom asked me, this little dog said nothing but wagged its tail gleefully as if waiting for praise. I beckoned him with my finger. Puzzled, he lowered his head, and I seized the chance to kiss him on the lips. I couldn't help but laugh. Tom was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes sparkled as he pounced on me, wagging his tail. "You finally said yes!" I hugged him back, unable to hide my smile.